You wouldn't want to end up at any of these places. For today's list, we'll be taking a tour of the top 10 toughest prisons in the world. These facilities are notorious for violence and very harsh living conditions. Do you think you'd survive at any of these places? Number 10 on our list, we're taking a trip to Russia to look at the Black Dolphin Prison. The Black Dolphin Prison got its nickname from a dolphin sculpture the prisoners made that now sits outside on the front grass. Also known as Penal Colony Number 6, the Black Dolphin is reserved for only the most dangerous inmates in the entire country. Prisoners here are watched and monitored 24/7 via video surveillance. Guards make their rounds every 15 minutes around the clock to check on the 50 square foot cells that are secured behind 3 steel doors for maximum isolation. Inmates are confined to these small cells in pairs of 2 and are granted very little time to go for walks or get fresh air. Prisoners who do get time outside of their cells are only allowed out for about 90 minutes per day, where they spend time in a concrete exercise yard. When going from place to place within the prison, inmates are cuffed, blindfolded, and forced to walk bent over so they can't learn the layout of the prison, interact with other inmates, or overpower the guards. This technique is believed to be unique to Black Dolphin Prison. Number 9. Kimiti Maximum Security Prison in Kenya. For the next stop on our world tour, we're taking a look at Kimiti Maximum Security Prison in the African country of Kenya. Kenya is known for having tough conditions in all of its prisons, but Kimiti is regarded as the worst of them all. This facility was built in 1954 by the British and modeled after an old-style colonial system to house its offenders during a state of emergency in 1952. Kimiti still has its original structure despite being borderline inhumane. Overcrowded and rather unsanitary, many serious health conditions such as HIV, tuberculosis, and dysentery are rampant. Kimiti was known for holding political prisoners and conducting executions, but its population grew in 2008 when a riot sparked by a contraband search was recorded on a cell phone and released to the public. Kimiti gained national attention again in 2021 when 3 inmates convicted of terror escaped with the help of 7 guards. The guards were later sent to prison for aiding in the escape. Number 8. Terre Haute, USA. We've made our way to America. Terre Haute Prison in Indiana is commonly referred to as the Guantanamo of the North, due to its harsh conditions and extra strict security. In 2008, the ACLU accused Terre Haute of having grossly inadequate conditions at its special confinement unit where prisoners who are waiting for lethal injection are placed. They also accused the prison of denying inmates medical care and mental health services, as well as subjecting them to noise to cause sleep deprivation. This medical negligence resulted in Terre Haute holding the record for the highest number of COVID cases within the entire country's prison system in 2021. Also in 2021 was a federal review from the Department of Justice of the execution policy due to a very high number of lethal injections, including the first execution of a woman in 67 years in the US. Still, there are 46 inmates at Terre Haute remaining on death row. Number 7. San Quentin Prison, USA. Making our second stop in the America leg of our tour, we find ourselves in California at San Quentin Prison. San Quentin is the oldest prison in California and has been home to countless infamous prisoners, including Charles Manson and the man who ended the life of Robert Kennedy. The prison is notorious for its violent reputation. It is also home to the only death row facility in America that houses over 700 inmates, making it the largest in America. But in 2022, the state of California began to abolish its execution policy and relocate the inmates being held at San Quentin. San Quentin is also notorious for interracial riots that are assumed to be encouraged by the guards. The government has yet to do anything about these riots and the corruption. Number 6. Diyarbakir Prison in Turkey. Leaving the US and arriving in Turkey, our next stop is Diyarbakir Prison. Diyarbakir was built in 1980 by the Ministry of Justice in Turkey after the September 12th Turkish coup d'etat. A total of 650,000 people were detained across the country after the September coup, and most were beaten and tortured. More than 500 inmates lost their lives, many of them were inmates at Diyarbakir. During a period of barbarity, which refers to the early and mid-1980s, when the prison was first established, prisoners were subjected to extreme negligence, which included sleep deprivation, severe verbal bullying, as well as food and water deprivation and more. Though rarely confirmed by superiors, hundreds of testimonies from inmates who stayed at the prison have come forth detailing the inhumane conditions and extreme methods to put prisoners into submission. Number 5. Mendoza Prison, Argentina. With a population roughly 3 times over its capacity, Mendoza Prison is severely overcrowded. As many as 5 inmates at a time are confined in little cells that measure about 43 square feet. Many inmates are forced to sleep on the floor without any mattresses, blankets, or pillows. Amnesty International reported about these conditions back in 2005, alerting that, quote, people in prison in Mendoza are in such a desperate situation that they have gone as as far as to sew their mouths up in demand for better living conditions. The conditions at that time were so extremely harsh that many inmates lost their lives at the hands of guards abusing their power. The prison lacked a proper sewage system, and inmates had no other choice but to defecate and urinate into plastic bags and plastic water bottles. This caused diseases to spread rampantly, and due to the prison's medical negligence, there was no way to treat all of the inmates. Many of them passed away from disease. Number 4. Carandiru Penitentiary, Brazil. Continuing the South American leg of our tour, we arrive in Brazil at the Carandiru Penitentiary. Built back in 1920, Carandiru was one of the largest prisons in all of South America. The prison is home to over 8,000 inmates, which causes a lot of problems regarding their quality of life. Lack of resources, inhumane methods of keeping prisoners in line, multiple health epidemics within the prison, and numerous human rights violations resulted in a violent riot that ended the lives of over 100 inmates. Carandiru riot took place after a game of soccer between prisoners turned sour because of a fight between two of the players. The military police were sent in to put an end to the fight, but instead treated it like open season and attacked the inmates who had no way of fighting back against the military-grade equipment. Over 60 police officers were convicted of their crimes, but have since then been deemed null. Number 3. Camp 14, Kaesyeon, North Korea. Nearing the end of our list is Camp Kaesyeon in North Korea. The facility is 166 square kilometers and placed near the middle of North Korea. Camp 14 was built in 1959 to serve as a political prisoner camp. Due to its size, the prison can hold up to 15,000 inmates at a time. Political prisoners in North Korea refers to anyone who has been deemed as enemy of the state. These prisoners serve life sentences and are subjected to ruthless forced labor as well as routine starvation and sleep deprivation. Camp 14 also employs the policy known as the 3 generations of punishment, which means many prisoners are there for merely being related to someone suspected of a crime, and they will likely pass away in prison without ever committing any crimes, putting an end to their bloodline. Number 2. Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Our second last stop on the Prison World Tour is located off the coast of Cuba. We now find ourselves at Guantanamo Bay Prison. Guantanamo Bay was opened in 2002 under the direction of President Bush following the events of September 11th. Bush initiated the War on Terror and opened Guantanamo Bay to be used as a military prison. The prison has received widespread criticism for allowing indefinite detention without trial and the routine use of waterboarding and extreme sexual misconduct as a means to control prisoners. There have also been reports of several inmates attempting and succeeding to end their own lives to escape the harsh methods of prison guards. The number of inmates was reduced during the Obama administration, but Guantanamo Bay remains open to this day. Amnesty International called the prison a major human rights violation and referred to it as, quote, the gulag of our times. Number 1. Gitarama Prison in Rwanda. The final stop on our tour is one of the most crowded prisons in the entire world, Gitarama Prison in Rwanda. Gitarama Prison is home to over 7,000 inmates despite only being designed to house 400. Most of the inmates are suspects of the horrific events that took place in Rwanda in 1994. Given the extreme overcrowding, the men and women housed there are forced to stand barefoot on the filthy ground for all hours of the day, which causes their feet to become severely infected. Many of them eventually require amputations, but with only one full-time doctor dedicated to the prison, most prisoners are unable to access the treatment that they need. Due to the extreme medical negligence, about half a dozen prisoners pass away from health complications every single day at Gitarama Prison. Well, that brings our tour to an end. Which prison shocked you the most?